Dialed in, they don't have to wait too long. Thanks, Nick.
Are we testing our mics? I didn't get that far.
I'm sorry?
Can I have a mask on?
Oh, sure.
I'm kidding. Are we testing the mics or no?
No, we're not testing. Nick said we're good. We're just going to
I test now.
stand by for 1 second while
Yeah,
I shuffle papers around.
Shuffle. Okay. This.
God.
By the way, Joe.
Nick, just give us the high sign when you're ready to roll. No problem. Just let us know.
Joe?
Yes.
Do you want me to move curriculums, talk about curriculums since Susan wasn't here?
Oh, and I think she wanted to.
Oh, Susan wants to?
I'm pretty sure she got up to speed.
Did she get up to speed? I want to make sure. You good with? Okay, good. Thank you.
I could get my steps in. Could have yelled that over sooner. Let go. Ooh, no running in school. Walk, walk. Nope, no running. Great, thanks, Nick. All squared away? Excellent, very good. Thank you, everybody. Sorry for the slight delay. We're just getting some technical items straightened out. So welcome to the Board of Education meeting. This is our first meeting after school started. Of course, we meet all summer, but this is kind of the first one back with everybody back from vacations and more dialed in. So just give me one moment to get through some housekeeping. In accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, PL 1975 announcement, I wish to announce that the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the School Districts of the Chathams Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, place thereof posted in the Board Administrative Offices, sent to the clerks of the Chatham Borough, the Chatham Township, the Library of the Chathams, the Chatham Courier, the Daily Record, the Star Ledger, and the TAP. Mr. DeQuilla, would you mind taking attendance?
Sure. Ms. Ciccarelli.
Here.
Ms. Clark.
Here.
Mr. D'Alessandro.
Here.
Ms. Kenny.
Here.
Ms. Ross.
Here.
Mr. Ryan.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Dr. Zhang.
Here.
And Ms. Weber.
Here.
9 present.
Look at that, the band's back together. Excellent. If you're able to, please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is right behind Dr. LaSousa. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Excellent. Thank you. Okay, housekeeping over. I do not have any president's comments, which is not unusual, so we're going to get right to it and send it over to Dr. LaSousa for Dr. LaSousa's report, as well as a presentation on the ballot questions in November.
Thank you, Ms. Weber, and I'll send everyone into the audience so we can do that presentation. All right, so thank you. As the board knows, and I'm sure most folks in the audience know, this November on Election Day, the board is presenting 2 ballot measures to the public and the residents seeking their approval for an increase in funding to undertake a variety of priorities. So this will be an overview of those 2 proposals. And then after we finish with this, the board will come back up on stage, ask any questions that any board member might have, and then, of course, in the public comment portion of the agenda, we will listen to any questions from the public. So just for quick context, since about 2011, when the Christie administration enacted what was known as property tax toolkit, boards of education can increase their tax levy on an annual basis no more than the prior year tax levy plus an additional 2%. So regardless of how much development there is in a community or how many homes are renovated, regardless of any of that, the Board of Education only has the authority to raise the tax levy by 2% more than the prior year tax levy. And if it seeks to raise the tax levy or wants to raise the tax levy more than that, it can only do so by placing separate ballot measures on the November ballot. So back in May, this Board of Education decided to maintain the tax levy at 2%, was actually entitled to raise it a little further than that, closer to 3%, but held it to 2%. That additional amount would have been used for health insurance funding. But the board kept the tax levy at 2% and then opted to submit, along with the budget to the executive county superintendent back in April, 2 ballot measures to increase beyond 2% if the voters voted up on election day. For a little further context than that, hard to believe, but back on March 2nd, 2020, I gave a presentation like this about a potential referendum, and the very next day we sent out a survey to the community about potential projects for a referendum to address a number of priorities at the time. Of course, a week or 2 later, the pandemic began and schools were shut down, and the interest rates that were so very low at the time have increased dramatically since then. And although we have been able to utilize some of the federal funding and capital reserve to try to tackle some of those projects that were listed in as potential projects in that referendum, we haven't been able to tackle all of them. And of course, beyond interest rates rising so much since 2020, the other thing that has gone up quite a bit is inflation, and that has created something of a gap between the district tax levy over the past 5 years and inflation over the past 5 years. So Mr. Smith, our finance chair, refers to this as the math problem or the tricky math problem, but obviously expenses have been rising faster than the tax levy increases. So the first proposal that will be on the ballot has to do with security, safety and security. Specifically, the board is asking for the approval to raise $850,000 more than the 2% tax levy permits in order to build security vestibules this coming year, and then devote that sum of money on an annual basis because it will become part of the base budget once it's approved, if it's approved, to other safety and security related expenditures. So to kind of discuss that a little bit further or draw that out, security vestibules are double sets of locking doors so that when a visitor enters a school, they pass through the exterior set of doors, and then they find themselves in a vestibule, in a corridor, where there is an additional set of locking doors that prohibits them from entering further beyond that into the school. Right now, of course, as you all are familiar with, once you enter an exterior set of doors in our schools, you theoretically have access to the rest of the school if nobody is there to prevent you from moving into the rest of the school. The current requirement in the state of New Jersey is for all schools to have security vestibules, but our schools were built so long ago that they do not currently have them, and that's why we are seeking to install them now. So these are just sample secure vestibules that I pulled off the internet. This isn't Chatham High School or any other one of our schools, but that's what the double sets of doors look like. And here you can kind of tell from the point of view of a visitor, you'd enter into the school, but you wouldn't really have any access beyond that corridor, where you could drop off a musical instrument or a lunch or something that your student forgot, but you wouldn't be able to enter all the way into the school and into the main offices. So approval of the proposal by the voters would lead to the construction of those secure vestibules at some point this school year, and the goal, of course, would be to have them fully complete by the time school begins next year. And then the dollar amount that would become part of the base budget would be used to pay for other safety and security expenses that we are currently struggling to keep up with. So I've listed a number of them here, 4 tranches, if you will, though there are more beyond this, but this just kind of gives a window into some of the costs that we have when it comes to safety and security. So first off, as many of you are familiar with, we employ Class 3 officers in our schools. Class 3 position was another one created under the prior administration, under the Christie administration, after the school shooting in Newtown, Connecticut. And it enables recently retired police officers to be employed as police officers in schools. And they function just like a regular police officer would, but their policing authority is confined to the schools, and the only place that they can work is in the schools within that municipality. Right now, we have 1 Class 3 officer in each school when we're fully staffed. It's been very difficult to fully staff our schools. There's a shortage of these folks. They kind of move around from district to district depending on the salary. We have a resolution on our agenda later on to increase their hourly rate by $2.50 to $40 per hour. So when we're fully staffed, we have 6. We really want to move that number up to 8 so that we have 4 in each municipality. A Class 3 officer can't move from one municipality to the other. If they're employed in Chatham Borough, they're confined to Chatham Borough. They can't help in Chatham Township. So we'd like to ideally have 1 in each school employed, have an additional 1 in each municipality floating around so that if there's a concert or an event or something like that, we have some extra help. And then if we lose 1, which we have done every year that we've had these folks in place, we have a backup to slide into a school on an emergency basis. So the goal is for us to get to a point where we've got 1 Class 3 officer in each school, and then 1 in each municipality to lend a hand in case we're short, or to lend a hand when we have an event or something else happening. You can see the total cost for police security is in excess of $500,000 right now. We also have had to invest more and more money as the years have gone on in items related to digital, electronic, cybersecurity type stuff. I've listed some of these items here. There's more, but here's just a quick snapshot. So we do have surveillance cameras throughout the buildings. We have card access systems that we've introduced. 32 access points. That just means you need to have a card in order to enter the school, and we program them according to what the staff member should have access to and should not have access to. We have had to put money into cyber insurance and security. In fact, we can't even get cyber insurance without multi-factor authentication and other measures that the insurance companies require in order to deem you insurable. So all of those kinds of items, right now, we're paying more than $200,000 a year for. And all of those items were items that we really weren't paying anything for 12 years ago. So we didn't have multi-factor authentication. We didn't have cyber insurance 12 years ago. These are all things that are kind of new to our burden. And then, of course, as we've talked at length many, many times at these board meetings, we have dramatically increased our counseling staff, especially for staff members who deal with acute issues and acute challenges that students have. So I just put just mentioned that we've added 3 additional licensed professionals since 2020, but of course we have many more beyond that that deal with risk assessments and violence and vandalism related incidents. But just 3, if we conservatively say that they're $100,000 a person, that would include health insurance when I say that. That's why it's conservative. Totaling all of those items up, we're spending well in excess of $1 million a year on security and safety related items in those areas alone. And so having the ballot measure pass means that we can build and construct the secure vestibules, but then we can help address what's been a crowding out effect with these expenses versus other ones that our school district also has to bear. So every resident in town will receive in the mail an explanation of the ballot and a sample ballot. It will have the actual language of the proposal as well as the bottom statement here, which is the explanatory statement that the county will issue. So approval of the $850,000 would equate a 1.23% tax levy increase. That increase then would become part of the base budget moving forward. That's proposal number 1. Proposal number 2 is to raise a similar amount of money, but this would be devoted to the human beings that we call paraprofessionals in our schools. So paraprofessionals are akin to teacher assistants. They're folks who are rooted in our IEP plans. So an IEP is an individualized education plan for students with special needs or special learning challenges that need assistance in the classroom. And our paraprofessionals work side by side these students and side by side our teachers to make sure that every student can access their education here in the district. They play a critical role. About 15 years ago, it was before the time of anyone here in this room today, at the time, the administration and board made the determination to take all of the paraprofessional positions that existed at the time and cut them in half, create twice as many positions, and that way there would be an avoidance of health benefits costs. So it was a budget savings measure. And you could argue it worked well for quite a while, but in recent years, particularly since the pandemic, it's been increasingly difficult to find staff willing to do these jobs. And it's been increasingly common that we're losing staff to other districts that offer health benefits while we do not. So these folks play a critical role. We really do need to be in a position where we can attract them here and then maintain them here with us so that our students are appropriately supported. So the passage of this proposal would enable us to take the 130 or so paraprofessionals we have on staff now when we're fully staffed. Right now, we're not fully staffed, by the way. And if you look at our agendas tonight and going back, you'll see resignations frequently of paraprofessionals, hiring of new paraprofessionals, and we would collapse those positions to the greatest extent possible so that we can employ folks full-time and then offer them a single layer of health benefits, meaning employee level of health benefits, not family benefits, but single coverage. And then our hope would be that in doing that, we'd become more competitive with other districts to whom we're losing these folks, and we'd be able to better support the programs and the students that are in our schools. Pretty straightforward. It's really a yes or no to provide health benefits to this segment of our staff. And it would, just like the first proposal, would be an initial increase in the tax levy, this one by 1.3%, and then that dollar amount becomes part of the base budget moving forward so that it's devoted to coverage, health benefit coverage for that segment of the staff. And just like the first, and it will contain the language that will be on the ballot as well as the explanatory statement at the bottom. This is just a slide from back in the spring when the board voted to pass the budget at the time. So using those estimates in the spring, you can see what the impact would be for each proposal per $100,000 in both the borough and the township. And we would update this, of course, as we get new figures from the county, but this is what was available as of May. And either proposal could pass, meaning number 2 is not dependent on number 1 is not dependent upon number 2. And that is the overview of the proposals.
That's why you did that before, right? Thank you, Dr. LaSousa. Very comprehensive. We have been talking about this for a while, and some of this, like you said, dates back pre-pandemic. I just wanted to open the mic to Mr. Smith first, as the Chair of Finance, to see if you have any comments or anything else you wanted to add.
No, I think it was a very good presentation, and just so everyone's aware, we are going to be sending a mailer around, which includes a lot of the information that Dr. LaSousa just reported on. So thank you for putting that together.
So that'll go to every resident. It'll effectively discuss everything that just went on in the presentation. It'll end up in their mailbox.
Correct.
I'm sure everybody's tuned in, but in case they missed it tonight, if they're watching a football game.
Yeah. Our intent is to be as completely transparent as possible.
Right.
It was very important for us, like I said at the last few meetings, to maintain that, 2% tax increase like we have for the past 5 years and go to the voters on anything additional, which is what we're doing here.
Go ahead, Michelle. Nick, can you turn on Michelle's mic?
As we move forward with whether it's a mailer or this presentation being posted on the district website, the financial impact to homeowners, can we make sure that somewhere on there it reads annual? And it doesn't, people might think it's quarterly, people might just make sure that the understanding is the dollar amount is for the annual impact. Thank you.
Did anybody else have any questions? I just want to point out, maybe just to myself, but Mike, you kind of went by the term crowding out effect. To me, it's less about security vestibles and more about how we've been spending over $1 million and taking it away from the business of educating students. Over the last 10 years, all of these have been new expenses, 10 to 12 years. And every dollar that we have to put toward a camera or a key card or security personnel, we have to take it from the educational budget. So this is really a way to kind of, do a market rate adjustment to put the money back in the education and then dedicate this money, if the voters vote it up, to dedicate just that money to security and allow us to put, money back into the educational purposes. So you use the term crowding out effect. I just didn't want to blow by that quickly because that equates to real dollars being put back into, whatever programs the administration feels, whether it's mental health or sciences or maths or arts, whatever it is. We have not been able to expand certain programs because we've had to dedicate over time $1 million to security, and now we're trying to readjust that budget. The other comment I just want to make is just how critical paraprofessionals play a role in the whole educational team. I mean, they are invaluable, and the schools really couldn't operate properly without the paraprofessionals. So that's, again, Mike said a straight up yes or no, but I just can't emphasize how critical they are. And every agenda, we're losing them to a district that pays benefits, not family benefits, but single benefits. And you get it. If you need benefits, you have to go to the next town over or 2 towns over or whatever it takes. So hopefully everybody, will get on board with those 2 items. Did anybody else have any comments or questions they wanted to allow? I know we've been talking about this for a while, so none of this was new to anybody. Okay, great. Mike, you want to continue on with your report?
That's the only item under my section of the agenda.
Look at that.
We do have a webpage set up that and this presentation will go on that webpage. The ballot language is already there. And there's a place where you can submit a question if you have some question about any of the proposals. Other than that, you noted that this is our first meeting since the school year began. We got off to a good start in all of our school buildings. All of our back-to-school nights have taken place, I think, except one at this point. The feedback has been positive in that regard. And that's it. Here we are,
Right.
September 18th.
Yep, very good. Excellent. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. We're going to send it over to Peter, and I know that was you. If folks have questions or comments, if you could just hang on to it for like 5 minutes, we're going to get to the public commentary very quickly. Peter, your update?
Yes. The contract, for the construction update, the contractor should be installing the railings on the new handicap ramp at the high school on Monday, September 25th, since their school is not in session that day. The contractor should be working on the wall at Washington as a result of the car accident in July over the next few weeks. From the business side, I do want to report that we've had only positive feedback regarding the food service and lunch program with our new vendor, Pontonian. It seems that everybody has been very impressed with the food that's being offered, and the results coming out from the students are all positive so far. On the other note, the district has finalized arrangements today with First Student, where they will be parking 3 buses down at the middle school, and they've been told the buses will have no reason to use a backup camera prior to 9 a.m., and 2 of them will be kind of on the curb line parallel to Van Duren, and 1 will be on the grass line kind of behind the Chatham family practice. That's all I have, unless there's any questions.
You said camera.
Oh,
backup
I'm sorry,
alarm.
the backup alarm prior to 9 a.m. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Peter. Anybody have any questions for Peter? They can use the camera all they want.
We also could mention that we received notification from the state that we were awarded a certain number of ROD grants, certain amount for ROD grant funding. ROD grant just stands for regular operating district, and every so often, once every 6, 7, 10 years, the state allocates money for construction for non-Abbott districts, otherwise known as ROD districts, and then will pledge 40% typically of the cost of certain capital projects that the DOE approves. So back in the spring, we submitted on order of $7 million worth of projects to see what perhaps we could have approved. We have not been notified what exactly was approved, but we've been notified that we were awarded $1.7 million in state funding. So we believe that is for roof replacements, for roofs that are beyond their lifespan, and HVAC units that are also beyond their lifespan and that need to be replaced. So we're waiting to get official confirmation and detail from the state, but at least the initial news is good news that we will get some additional funding to take on HVAC and roof
Right.
projects.
That is good news.
So
But-
the state determines exactly what the money needs to be used for?
The state specified when we submitted the application of 9 potential areas that it would fund, and then told us in kind of vague language that it would prioritize after receiving applications from across the state. So we think that they have prioritized roofs and HVAC equipment above anything else.
Got it.
So we'll find out though, hopefully pretty soon.
The-
Dr. Souza, but we do have to already have this money in the budget, right? It
Yes,
has to be-
this isn't borrowed money, this is
Right.
capital money. Like, so every summer, we typically take on capital projects. Roofs are always on the list in the summer, and the state is just going to offset our costs. But we have to be able to have the money up front to complete the projects.
Right, we have to pay for it, right, Peter, and then submit for reimbursement, correct?
Yes, it's a district pays for it, and if the process remains the same, you get reimbursement at a 25% completion, 50%, 75, and 100% complete.
Right, which is another reason why some people say, well, why do you roll over $1 million in capital reserve? This is exactly one of the reasons, so that you have the money to pay, apply for the ROD grant, and then get reimbursed for it. If we didn't have the money, we would have to be, that's when you see districts running these very high referendums, because maybe they didn't reserve enough to do all these projects. And again, it's every 6 or 7 years, and you want to be in a position to take full advantage. We submitted as many as we could. We were not shy at all. We submitted as much as we could, but if you don't have the money, you can't even apply for it. You're completely out of luck. So thank you. Thank you for the finance people for making sure we're always in a good position to do that. Anything else, Peter?
Nope, that's it.
Excellent. Does anybody else have any questions for Peter? Nope. On to Riley.
Athletics-wise, Cougar Weekend is this weekend, so it's been a big school spirit week at the high school. Thursday, there was girls volleyball at 5:15 at the high school, field hockey at 7 at Cougar. And then Friday is girls and boys soccer. The boys will play first this year at 5. The girls will play at 7:30. Then Saturday's the football game at 7 at Cougar Field as well. There is a new ticketing system. It's called GoFan. You can download the app on your phone. So I would just make sure you download that app before you attend any of those events. Performing arts-wise, they just held auditions for the fall play, Macbeth, at the high school. And then the food service, that has been a huge hit for sure. I was talking to the lunch ladies the other day, and they said that there's more people buying the hot food. So the breakfast sandwiches are a big hit. Yeah, so all's well with that, good student feedback. Activities-wise, the high school had an activity fair last Thursday. They essentially have all the clubs and different groups stationed with little folding tables outside, and all students can go and just walk around, sign up for clubs. Usually you get candy if you sign up for a club, so there's kids who join like 11 clubs. Good way to get involved. The administration at the high school also wanted me to recognize the Links program. They've done a lot this fall in getting the freshmen transitioned into the high school. They did a couple events before school started. They were there during the summer planning and organizing an open house, new entrant events, and they also went to school early on the first day to help set up kids in their homeroom. The other big thing has been the student cell phone policy with the new little pockets. I can say for most students, they're not a fan, which isn't really a surprise, but teachers, the opinion that probably matters more, big fans. Less distractions, less kids going to the bathroom, wandering the halls. So overall, a good thing educational-wise. You're going to have teenagers complain, but exactly. So every classroom. There's a couple, it's up to teacher discretion, I guess, technically is the policy, but I only have one class where a teacher doesn't follow it because it's all seniors, and he's like, I trust you guys, just keep them in your bags. But mostly all teachers. You trust me? Thank you.
I did. We've had a lot of positive feedback from parents also about the policy. And, right, in short, there's a jacket with a bunch of pockets in it in every classroom, and students are required to place their cell phone in a numbered slot, and they can pick it up when they leave the classroom. And if there's an emergency, of course, they can grab the phone. But it keeps the cell phones away from the student's person throughout the length of class. And so we've had a number of parents email us, talk to us directly, say how much better it's been. And some students even have expressed positive feedback too.
Yeah, the safety thing, I know that was a big concern just from talking to parents, but we've had drills already because you had to have the 2 in August, fire drills, and I think parents were worried that their kids weren't going to get their phones, especially more in like a lockdown or a shelter in place. But teachers have been very good about it, and so have students. It's always like in one class, like 2 students will go up and just grab all of them, or they'll take the jacket off the wall and bring it outside, and they're just like, okay, here we go, like distribute them. So the safety thing is not an issue, which I know a lot of people were worried about when they first heard about it.
Great. Thanks, Riley. Very comprehensive report. Okay, moving over to committee reports. Ms. Ciccarelli, we're going to start off with you on personnel.
Yes, we met last Wednesday, the 6th, and just discussed any vacancies that we had in personnel and anything that we were advertising moving forward as far as vacancies. We are meeting again on October 4th.
Okay, excellent. Very good, thank you. Curriculum, Ms. Ross?
Curriculum also met last Wednesday, September 6th. So we covered a lot of topics. I'm going to just give a broad highlight. Standardized testing, the NJSLA exam results are back in and they're being analyzed from the spring. So families can expect to receive the individual student reports in the mail in early October. We've talked a lot about the health and PE standards. Nothing new to report. The same protocols as last year are going to be in place. A lot of the same teaching materials will be used. Families will receive emails with the materials in advance of the lessons and can opt out at their discretion. ESL student headcount, English as a second language, we're seeing a mild uptick in those students, particularly in the K-3 school K-3 school, And the building administrators are just continuing to acquire the resources necessary to support both the teachers and the students. There was a new teacher retreat that welcomed 30 staff in August, and the time was spent going through technology training, student well-being, and team building exercises, and we just wanted to thank Danielle Dagunas for doing a great job in organizing that orientation. Something else that we had touched upon at a prior meeting here was holidays and how they are being taught at the K-3 schools particularly, and we are continually updating the guidelines to provide consistent instruction across all 3 buildings in recognizing the holidays while preserving instructional time, particularly in social studies. And the intention here is really to have the students realize that while they may celebrate different holidays, there are strong similarities among the holidays rooted in the traditions, and that it's a lot of family time that is spent. So children are going to be encouraged to share traditions or bring in a show and tell item for a particular holiday that they may celebrate, including Rosh Hashanah, Diwali, Hanukkah, Christmas, Lunar New Year, and Ramadan. There was a survey that went out to families to acquire, information about what is being celebrated at home. There will be no changes to the things that are really well loved, that being the Halloween parades, the classroom celebrations prior to winter break, and the Valentine's Day card exchanges. Finally, what everyone is always thinking about, the reconfiguration planning that is going to eventually shift the 5th grade into CMS and 3rd grade into Lafayette by the 2025-26 school year. Thoughtful planning continues around this. There are reconfiguration teams at all of the K-3 schools and at Lafayette to discuss logistics, teacher concerns. There's a strategic team that has been put in place at the middle school that includes 9 CMS teachers representing all departments, as well as 3 representatives from Lafayette. They are set to meet at least 7 times this year. And part of that discussion is also going to include what the best approach is going to be to how to involve parents in the discussions going forward. Finally, the new CMS principal, Mr. Orsini, who's been great, my kids are both in the middle school, has created a transition leadership team, and they will attend the Association for Middle Education Conference in early November. And we're proud to announce that Mr. Orsini, as well as Danielle Dagunas, who is the supervisor of design and technology, have been selected to present at the conference. So I will stop there. Any questions? It was a lot, but.
Thank goodness somebody's working. I see. That's where the administration is spending their time on curriculum, which is as it should be. Any questions for Susan or Dr. Donahue on any of those items? Excellent. Okay, very good. Finance and facilities, Mr. Smith, anything additional?
Nothing additional. Finance and facilities has not met, I believe. I don't have my calendar on me, but it's October 11th. We're meeting October 11th.
October 11th, excellent. Okay, over to you, Mr. Ryan, for policy and plan.
Policy has not met, but we have been communicating via email. There is an action item on the agenda this evening related to a policy that needs to be in place at the start of the school year, dealing with threat assessment teams and other violence-related types of incidents.
Excellent. Okay, great. Thank you, Mike. Any liaison report outs? Susan?
Can you hear me? I have an update for CFCF. They were able to provide $85,000 in grants from generous donations for the 2022-23 fiscal year. They've already kicked off fundraising for this year and have approved grants of $11,500 in September and that will include the purchase of large indoor-outdoor blocks to be used at recess at Washington Avenue School, and also an artist-in-residence program with the New Jersey Symphony for band and orchestra students both at the high school and Lafayette. And the annual trivia night, which is a lot of fun, save the date went out, is going to be November 4th. More details coming. That's it.
Excellent, great. Thank you, Susan.
Yep.
Any other liaison reports? Nope. Excellent, very good. So then I would like to make a motion to move the public and executive session minutes for the August 21st meeting, and I believe Mr. Ryan was the only one with a conflict?
And Dr. Zhang.
Oh, you weren't? I didn't note that down. Sorry. Excellent. Okay, so all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? There you go.
Duly noted, minutes past 7:02.
Great, thank you. So we have we have our first opportunity for public commentary. If you would, hearing of the citizens during the public commentary section of the agenda is an opportunity for members of the public to be heard about issues which are or are not topics scheduled for the current meeting. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers will be asked to limit their comments to about 3 minutes in length of time. If you could introduce yourself and sign in, I believe there's a sign-in sheet, right, Peter? Mm-hmm. If you could sign in and introduce yourself, that would be great. If you plan on, you don't have to stand there the whole time, but just so we have an idea, if you don't have to queue up right now, but if you see the line getting lower, if you could just jump on the line and sign in maybe ahead of time, just to save a little bit of time. So again, this is your opportunity to make a public comment. I usually take notes, and if you have questions, I'll write them down. We'll address all of the questions at the end of public commentary. So this is your time. You won't be interrupted other than for Mr. D'Alessandro to give you a reminder about the time ticking away. But again, the floor is yours, and again, we won't be interrupting you. Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for opening it up to us. I appreciate it. My name's Kara Firth. Some of you may remember me. I was here earlier in the spring, had to take a couple meetings off, but I'm back. One of my girlfriends is going to talk about the one issue that we've had since springtime, so I'm not going to let her take that. But I also am standing here to represent a bunch of people, both specifically from Milton Avenue School and Washington Avenue School on security. Obviously a topic for this evening in general. I know that Dr. LaSousa just presented and mentioned that we're looking to potentially have 8 security guards in place. That would be wonderful. It's my understanding right now we have 4. The borough is sharing 1 for all 3 schools, which, as someone who sits here and listens to you talk about how we can raise a 2% levy to use the money to build a vestibule, I want to light my hair on fire. I just would like to know why we're prioritizing a vestibule instead of actually hiring the police officers. I know, I understand it takes a very long time to get people on board, but if you're going to raise the money from the taxpayers, I ask that you please prioritize putting an actual officer in the school full-time instead of an additional door. That's basically it for me today.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kara.
She's taller than I am. Hi, Allie Steenstra. I have been here a few other times to talk about the same subject. Just here to reiterate some things about kindergarten. The importance of full day. Everyone knows, I know you're all working towards getting there, which we appreciate. This year, my daughter found out 2 weeks before school started that she actually did get in, so we were super thankful, but also still a little disappointed to know that there are a lot of families who didn't get there. And I know that now we're able to offer more full day, but it's left a small group in the minority. And that minority might be people who didn't win the lottery, but it also might be people who just can't financially afford the $7,000. And as this town is starting to welcome more and more low-income families, which is great, we also need to be conscious of the fact that it's a hefty burden to place on anyone for public education. So in this time when costs seem to be consistently rising, we're asking that you guys try in your best ability to work within the budget to ensure that everyone can have free full-day kindergarten. We know that it's difficult. We know that it might have to take away from other things, but we think that it is incredibly important for every person here in Chatham to have the ability to get their kid there. So one of the things that we also would like to know is for next year, for the 2024 to 2025 year, we know that we are not going to have the move yet. So is there something that we have learned from this year? Because I think it was a little bit crazy to only have a few kids not offered full day. And how can we address that? And also, you brought up the ESL. That's going to play an even bigger role, I would suspect, in these new kindergarteners. If we have more ESL students, that also would really seem to make sense to have them in full-day kindergarten in our schools to continue learning. So just there, that's it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Zara Mineo. I'm with these two. I'm also here to speak on behalf of security. And also, I just want to thank all of you guys for everything that you do. But I want you to know that we are here because we want to be involved. We want to help solve any problems or help you get what you need to get so that we can make our schools safer. We're not here just to criticize or do anything about that. So with that being said, I echo Kara's sentiments about the vestibule maybe not being the first priority, like having an officer in every school should be the first priority, and maybe you should reword the ballot to be that, because like if you don't know, or you're a parent who's like not involved, and I just read about a vestibule, like I'm walking up to Washington Avenue School, which is where my son goes, there's 2 doors, right? There's a main door and then the gym door right to the right. So like putting a vestibule in just one door doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, I get why you're doing it security-wise, but like, you're not really worried about the parent bringing the lunch, because most of us are there volunteering all the time. And if someone is going to come to our school to do something that they shouldn't be doing, they're not going to choose the double door to the left. They're going to choose the easy way to the right. So if you maybe just want to reprioritize that and maybe even just reword it, I think that might do a lot of good. And also, we are happy to spread the word and explain exactly what is going to be on this ballot, what is going to be used for, because I think that a lot of people just have misinformation or no information, and that's how you're going to get it passed. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you? I'm Alex Garvey-Friel. I live in the Milton district. I just wanted to add an inflection point on some of the topics my girlfriends have previously discussed. I echo Zara's sentiments that we love Chatham. We send our children to you guys because we know we're one of the best public schools in the state. But we also feel the need to speak up, and we have a very short number of minutes to do so. And point out what we feel passionately about, and security is definitely an important one. My inflection point, as Kara noted, we have one security officer currently floating within the borough. However, I wanted to also just make it known that we do take all of the students from Chatham and put some of our youngest, most vulnerable students in the CHIP program at the Milton School District. Many of which have all sorts of disabilities, including physical disabilities. And when we put an emphasis on vestibules, it does beg the question about how we're making sure we're protecting some of those children that are at the most highest risk and the most vulnerable, also the youngest, and are coming from the entire school districts. So I wanted to make that point of inflection. And I also wanted to echo the sentiments about full-day kindergarten. I do have pause when I think about sort of the haves and have-not conversations when it comes to Chatham's school district, and we're talking about potentially those children that can afford a full day versus those can't, without a place for free full day for all. So I just wanted to bring that point back to the board. So I thank you guys for your time and patience. And thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tamara Owie, and I have children at 3 different schools, and I just want to talk a little bit about the security also. I know that you're a big proponent of having security in every school, and I think that you're fully on board with having officers in every school, and we thank you for that. And we do think that it's a borough problem, and we are all willing to go to the borough meetings and talk to the police department about their hiring and getting people on board. But I think the biggest thing is that really having a class 3 officer in every school might not be possible, because there's people looking for jobs across the board in different towns. There's openings everywhere. So I think what we would be looking for you to do is to maybe look at opening the jobs to other people, like retired police officers that could carry guns in schools that don't have the class 3 specification, or to look at private security if we can't have the town employ the people that we're expected to.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Wolf Herblatt. I have a kid in the Chatham Middle School and twins who are in the Southern Boulevard School. I have a question about the busing, which seems very weird for me. My middle school leaves at 7:15, and my twins leave at 8:40. I'm wondering if there's a way for us to make the twins or the elementary school kids who are waking up very early in the morning be the first on the buses, while the middle school kids and teenagers who go sleep very late and becoming night owls be on a later bus. I think that will help us a lot. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Hi, Vicki Aloya. I'm in the township. First of all, thank you for all that you do for the school and the town. Secondly, I want to commend Mr. D'Alessandro, because last time I was here in May, I asked about the permanent tax levy, and I asked the specific question, does this mean my taxes will go up, increase every year? And he's the only one that said yes, and I really commend you for that. And I think you talk about being transparent. I think you need to be transparent on this fact that this permanent tax levy is increasing the base budget, which for every subsequent year, the taxes will be higher. That has not really been made clear. Back in December, you stated that the security vessels would be state-funded and the state funding will fund the remaining portion of the projects, and you'll fund the remaining through the district's capital reserve account as part of the annual budget. I was hoping you would continue to fund something like this through the annual budget and not look to the taxpayers to increase taxes to pay for spending that you really can't afford to spend on. And you just received the $1.7 million from the state. That's great money to be used for the security vestibules. The other point, I'm shocked that we don't have a security officer at every school. I thought we did. Okay, so that's a priority number one, other than the doors. I agree with the previous comments. And again, I raised this point in May. I don't see any fiscal restraint on this board. Could we cut expenses? Could we work within your 2% annual cap that you have for your budget? Can't we work within those means? Mr. LaSousa, you mentioned that you would love to have 2 additional floating Class 3 officers. That's a luxury this budget just can't afford to do. That's the police department's role. Get a security officer in every school. Great. We don't need 2 floaters. Again, let's look to where we can cut expenses, and let's show some fiscal restraint here. I have yet to hear those words uttered from the board. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. What? Yeah, I know.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Goncalves. I'm a resident of Chatham Borough. I just wanted to echo some of the comments made already. by some of my fellow Milton Avenue School and Lafayette School parents, which is where my children are currently enrolled. First, I actually do agree with the security vestibules. I fully support it on the ballot personally. I think it's table stakes. My children have been in private schools where these vestibules have been installed within a matter of months as soon as the issue was identified. So I thank you. It sounds like you've tried to fund it in other ways, but I fully support it being on the ballot. I also really wanted to emphasize the point about expanding the description for Class 3 officers to potentially include private security. I just think that time should not be wasted. It does sound like there's a lot of intricate issues, which some of my neighbors, fellow residents, et cetera, are more akin to than I am. But I just want to emphasize that as parents, we are just interested in having both the vestibules in place, which again, I think is table stakes, as well as security, and just urge the board to think of a solution for, again, whether it's. And I do also agree with the comment about potentially maybe adding even just a single sentence to the ballot to, I don't know if it's in the ballot or in any of the commentary around the ballot, that it seems like the board has tried to fund this in lots of other ways. And at this point, we kind of just need to do it. I don't know if all residents are aware of that, who don't pay as close attention to every month's meeting. So thank you again for everything that you're doing for us. Just a couple of additional comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Joyce Martinson. I'm from the borough. I have a 30-year-old, so I don't have any children in the school system, but I care a lot about Chatham, and I care a lot about security, and I'm disappointed, and I would really like to know why the vestibules and the police officers have not already been put in the schools. I think that it was a very important item, and I can't understand why you didn't use any of the COVID money for it. I'd love to know how much money you did get for COVID these years, and I can't understand why we can't use I think Mr. Bradley Smith said that the second question for the general public to vote on in November elections is due to Chatham's inability to use the surplus COVID-19 funds. Now, if I recall, these vestibules and the security personnel, they were planned, they were promised, and they should have happened by now. So now you're asking for a 2% every year going forward. The first year, maybe for this security and for these 130, which I think is an awful lot of paraprofessionals for our schools. And I'd love to know what districts are paying more. You say there's a lot of districts, make that public. Maybe you'll get the okay, because if everyone's, I don't necessarily believe that everybody's getting more than Chatham. I think that people would love to work in Chatham, but needless to say, this should have been done already. This is a priority, and if you get 1.7 million from the state now, maybe you still have to pull some of that money and forget about the roof for 1 year and get the security going for these ladies and gentlemen who want their kids to be safe in school. That should be your number one. That should have been the number one on the list for how they were going to spend the state money. And personally speaking, shame on you for not having it done already. Cut some of the frill and get back to the basics. That's what everyone's doing in America right now. They're cutting their budgets. They're seeing that they can't do everything. As far as I'm concerned, security is very important. Thank you.
If there's nobody else that's going to speak after this gentleman, we'll close the public commentary, and then there's another opportunity at the end. If somebody else wanted to speak, just hop on behind this gentleman. There is another opportunity at the end, which we get to fairly quickly.
Hi, my name is David Workman, 19 Susan Drive in Chatham. Is this interactive, or do you just listen to me talk?
Yes, the second thing. We listen to you talk, and then it's public comments. We try
Sure.
and answer questions.
It's my first time. My first time. I have a
Oh, yeah,
fourth
no,
grader.
I understand that. But
Sure.
yes, so you make your comments, and if you have questions, I'm trying to jot them down. As you notice, there was 6 or 7 questions that are identical. Instead of answering them individually, it's just easier to answer it all at the end.
Sure. I guess writing in on what this lady just said, what was the COVID money used for? I'd love to know. Is it still, somehow in a fund, or is it going to be, used or earmarked for certain reasons, such as the security, which would be great. My other question is having to do with the education curriculum. Okay, having my son just starting in 4th grade, I'd like to know who I can speak to about the curriculum and what I can expect for him in the coming year. Would that be Mrs. Ross? Is that yes?
Donahue,
Pardon me?
as well as Dr. Donahue.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
You can just email us. We're happy to chat.
Okay. And you had mentioned you were hiring 3 clinicians, okay? And I'm just wondering what their roles would be, and I mean, as this young lady just said, I mean, she was talking about fiscal, restraint or fiscal responsibility. I'm just curious what the clinicians are for. Is this, as other people have said, the country's going through a change right now. I mean, I think, if we're going to keep on having mental health issues, we're going to, have a big problem in this country. So I don't know how much we're feeding into that, and is that what these clinicians are for? So, but like I said, this is my first time, and I look forward to coming more and being extremely active. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening to all. Bill Heap, Hillside Avenue. I'll start with a little perspective and then a couple of very random comments and then some more serious comments. A little perspective. We live in one of the safest towns in New Jersey, in the United States, and on the planet. I have never felt unsafe here, ever. I have some perspective because I worked for 37 years in Irvington, so I know what an unsafe town is like. There is no way to prevent a random act. That doesn't mean we're stupid about it, but let's just have a little perspective on that. This is a safe town. Okay. Very random comment. I missed last month's board meeting. I was vacationing on in the village of Beach Haven on the sunny island of Long Beach, and I was rubbing elbows with Taylor Swift. So my apologies for missing the meeting then. Pandemonium broke out about a half a mile from where I was staying, and I was this close to breathing celebrity vapors, and I missed it. Oh well. Okay. The next item comes under the heading of on-the-ground intelligence. Hillside Avenue had its block party this week. Hillside from Red Road to Watchung, Red Road, Pillman, Bridge, Raymond, and Overlook. My observation from that block party was there were a lot of toddlers in attendance. So I don't know if we're teeing ourselves up for a little bit of student population whiplash or not, but it probably deserves a close eye. Last random comment is when I walked in, I sat down in that seat, and the state money, it looks like, is just in the nick of time because I felt water dripping on my head, and there is a puddle over there. So I'll be happy to point it out to you after the meeting. Somebody could take a look at the air conditioning system, or there's a leak in the roof. More serious comments. I'm not a fan of this second question business being used as a way to increase the budget in a backdoor sort of way. I think you ought to be come straight out and ask for the money. I think it just adds to confusion, and I have said this before. I think you're obligated to try and memorialize or codify this money that comes in so that it is spent for the intended purposes. You guys are going to be, laying on the beach in Florida a couple of years from now, and you deserve that for sure. But a new board may come in. Institutional memory is short. And money is fungible, and they may find a way to spend it on other items. So I think it's important to make sure that it's used for the intended purpose, and the people will decide through a vote whether this money is going to be used or not, or provided or not, sorry. And the last comment is, I hope you haven't forgotten about the law firm giving a presentation on the lawsuit that has been instituted. It would be nice, you lent the community's name to this law firm. It would be nice to have a presentation to find out exactly what we're getting ourselves into. So if you could comment on that, I'd appreciate it. And thanks. And coming to school board meetings is a whole lot more fun than Taylor Swift.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Heap. We're going to close the public commentary, and the board will try and address and answer between the board and the administration and the finance. I'm going to try and go in order, and it'll cover many different folks' answer since there was a lot of repetition. So Kara was up first. I'm just going to look at my notes here for a minute. So I know none of you spend as much time looking at board meetings as we do or attending them. But if you have been following along for any length of time, whether it's a month, a week, 6 months, a year, or the last 10 years or 12 years that I've been on the board, we have said hundreds of times what our priorities are. Security, number one. Mental health was always number two. And then, of course, educating the children is number three. So nobody in this room thinks that security is not the number one priority. The budget money is there for all the class threes. The school cannot hire class threes. They have to be hired by the police department. The police department does their best in interviewing. There's very few class 3 officers available. If you think about it, you have to be retired within 3 years to qualify as a class 3. Now, if you started as a cop at 25, you retire 25 years later at 50, you're not really looking to do this, 40, 42-hour job. You're looking for your second career. A lot of guys go to law schools. They have side businesses. They do second careers entirely. So the pool is just not there. It's not like every police officer that retires immediately wants to be a class 3, and every school wants them. That's why we need to increase our hourly wage. It's on the budget now from 40 to 42, but we can't compete with districts that are offering 50. And it is, somebody mentioned what a lengthy
37 to 40.
37 to 40? Oh,
Yeah.
we're still behind the 8 ball there. But security is an absolute priority. We've been trying to hire people, if they don't, and some people just don't pass muster. They just don't get through the first round, the second round, the third round. You hope, the 5th, 6th, 7th, but it's up to the chiefs, the police chiefs, to decide if they are qualified and if they're going to offer them a position. This is not the township or the borough municipalities. They're all on board for security. They don't have it in their budget to pay for it, which is why the district is paying for it, but it's not like they're saying, oh gosh, we're not going to help get you security. So they're doing everything they possibly can. It's a matter of supply and then just funding it, just budgeting. So it has been prioritized, and the money's budgeted already. So, if you all know of any class 3 officers, please send them our way or send them to the police chief's way. So that would be great. Now, I'll touch more on security as other people had slightly different angles on that. But Allie, you mentioned full day kindergarten. Again, not that everybody pays attention month to month, but this board and previous boards have been talking about offering full day kindergarten for the last decade. We have slowly gotten there, and we know that we can offer full day kindergarten in 2025 tuition free. Each year we've added more and more sections. And again, I said to somebody, I don't know if it was Kara, but we were never willing to say, you know what, we're not going to offer full day kindergarten until we can deliver it fully in 2025. We slowly rolled it out, and at one point it was a third that got in and 2/3 that didn't. Then it was half and half, and now the pendulum has swung the other way. A third didn't necessarily get in. And there are some parents that come to us and say, I don't want full day kindergarten. I've got other things, I just don't want full day kindergarten. So we will offer it in 2025. Somebody said, is there lessons to learn? I might ask Dr. LaSousa to answer that. Of course, there's always lessons to learn, but specifically, I think I'll let Dr. LaSousa touch on that one. Zara, I think you said something about the doors and the various man traps and what you could do to help solve the problem. So definitely to help solve the problem, spread the word. And I'm not saying spread the word what your position is, just please ask people to read their mailer. Just ask them to make an informed vote. I had one guy yelling at us 12 years ago. I can't believe, he actually had the mailer in his hand. And he was yelling at us. You didn't tell us. I go, did you read the pamphlet that you're in your hand? He goes, I didn't read this. And he threw it down. So yes, no, whatever, however you want to vote, just make it an informed decision. So that would be helpful to spread the word. And the man traps, every other door is locked. So the only door that a vendor, a parent, a caregiver can enter is the main set. So if you think about, you say, oh, the parent's coming in for lunch. And without divulging too much, sometimes we have trouble with parents. Sometimes we have to greet parents at the door and send them away. Sometimes we have to call the police. Sometimes there's court orders involved, there's restraining orders. So you think, oh gosh, there's no problems here. Trust me, there's problems here. So, I mean, we've had to have one parent sent away from the high school that was subsequently arrested. So, and he went to the main doors and he got in and he was met with a security guard. Thank God they were there. And then, he did try to go around to several other doors and they were locked. And we had to call the township police and they got involved. So every other door is locked. There's no rocks by doors propping them open. The teachers are very diligent about making sure that no other doors are open and everybody's funneled. So we do think, not just we, I mean, I design software for a living. The security expert, law enforcement, Department of Education, this is the best way to spend the money.
I teach in a school that has these exact doors. 2 years ago, they came in. I can't remember, someone was talking about the right door and the left door, and like if you go in the right one, you reconfigure the whole entrance to the building when you install these doors. So there will be only one choice of how you enter the building and how you're buzzed in. It does deter unnecessary traffic in the building. We are looking to have your children, all of our children and staff, safe, and it just allows the people who need to be in the building to be in the building and allows unnecessary traffic in the building. Lunches can be dropped off in these vestibules, instruments can be dropped off in these vestibules. They're monitored by the adults who are, buzzing. People who come to library can certainly come to library, but they're buzzed in through that vestibule. And there are cameras in them. It is a much more streamlined process. It is one line of defense for safety. And I do believe, and I feel strongly, and I've said it, I've wanted them here for a long time. I'm happy we are getting this level of security, and it should not be minimized. And if you go online and look at them, you'll see all different models like Dr. LaSousa showed, but you'll see it's not just locking one door and opening another one. It's reconfiguring, hence the dollar amount. That has to be attached. It has to be done the correct way.
Great. So I'm just going to continue down the list. Tara talked about, oh, I'm sorry.
I'll add
Robbie.
again, you go ahead.
Okay. You sure?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm just going to continue down the list to make sure I address everybody's comment or question. Tara mentioned something also about security, that it's used, and you also mentioned about private security and maybe other people to carry weapons. The most advantageous reason to have Class 3 officers that are hired by our police chiefs, and I say, again, remember we have two different municipalities. We're one school district, but two municipalities, and there's two police chiefs. The biggest advantage, some of you folks are newer to town, you may have recalled that in the past we had what we call red shirts. They were retired police officers. But the big difference is, aside from the training, and how soon they've been retired from a police officer versus 10 years versus 3 years, they have Class 3 officers or a school resource officer has a radio. They have a radio and they have the map of the school and they have the layout of the school where they can immediately say there is an incident in the library or the L wing or the cafeteria at Milton. And immediately with our system and the 911 system that we have, it immediately goes to all the police departments, prosecutor's office, it goes to all the various law agencies. If we have a private security or a retired police officer that's not Class 3 or an SRO, dialing 911 is great, but it's not going to be able to tell us, you know what, the incident's in the L wing and you can evacuate 95% of the rest of the building. Otherwise, they just have to lock it down. And again, I'm talking just from listening to the various law enforcement agencies, the Department of Education, Dr. LaSousa. Locking the building down with all of the students in it is not ideal. You want as many students out of the building as possible, and that's what the radio will tell them. Okay, evacuate everything but the L wing, and then they can concentrate and provide support at that pinpointed location. So we actually have talked about private security. We have talked about, how do we fill that gap in the interim? And and Dr. LaSousa meets with the police chiefs. And again, it's our number one priority, number one. Number two is mental health. Again, number three is education, which is sad. It should be the other way around, but this is the times we live in. So please don't anybody think that security is not our number one priority for our staff, for our students, for our, visitors to the school. Mr. Wolf, I'm going to have to leave the busing question to either Dr. LaSousa or Peter, if you could just stand by on that one. Vicki, I don't know if you saw the beginning of the presentation or even some of my comments. Sadly, we did not get a check for $1.7 million. We have been approved for 1.7. We have to pay out that money and then get reimbursed for things that qualify. And the state has decided that the things that qualify this round, could change 6 years from now, the things that qualify this round are HVACs and roofs. We did put in for security vestibules, but we don't get to say, well, prioritize this over prioritize that. And you mentioned that the board doesn't have fiscal restraint, and Bradley may touch on this, but each year, we could have gone higher on a taxing authority, but fiscal restraint is cutting $500,000 in administrative costs, going only up to 2% versus, was it 3.5? So we had 3 and a change taxing authority, but instead of going and just saying, you know what, we're just going to use all of it and put the money where we want it to, the Finance Committee came back with a recommendation to submit out 2 questions to the voters. Vote it up, vote it down, then we'll know where everybody stands. So I think year over year, again, and I don't expect everybody to go to these board meetings, I really don't, but it's a little disheartening. They're on video, so please go watch them first before you say, you have no fiscal responsibility. Look at the things that we cut out that we would have otherwise wanted in the budget. Take a look at, you're saying it's all frill. I think Mrs. Mortensen used the word frill. We're way past frill. We're way past fat. We're into bone. If you go back and look at you'd be appalled at some of the things we actually cut out of the budget. But here we are, and that's us showing fiscal restraint and some fiscal responsibility. Vanessa, you mentioned security vestibules. And adding a single sentence to clarify it. I just want to clarify the budget. Just for simplicity, it's not that we're adding 2%, the extra 2% every year. So if the budget was $1 million, it's just because my math is simple. If the base budget is $1 million, we get to add 2% every year, or less, or more sometimes, but generally we stay right around 2%. That means next year's budget is going to be $1,020,000. That becomes the base budget. So if the security vestibules were the $20,000, we're not going to keep adding that $20,000 on, but that becomes the base budget. So now if the Finance Committee recommends 2% on top of that, the base budget starts at $1,020,000, and then we add 2%, and it becomes $1,040,400. So it's not that we're going to add $850,000. We just in that simplistic math. So it becomes part of the base budget so that we continue to pay the paras, so we can continue to pay for all of those security things. It's different than a one-time expenditure where we're building an auditorium or turfing a field where it's truly just one and done or spent over the course of a year or 18 months. This is operating money that has to continue and live on. So it becomes part of the base budget, and that's where the permanentness comes in. And then next year, the Finance Committee will discuss what are their priorities. But as you all know, you read the papers, inflation has gone up 6-8%. We're trying to keep our expenses at 2%, and the only way to do that is to cut teachers, larger classes. We're trying to do the best we can, but as I said, if you go back, some of you would absolutely have disagreed with some of the things we had to cut. Larger class sizes. It's just, as Mr. Smith said, it's a horrible math problem. Our expenses went up 8%. Our revenue is 2%. The gap has to come from somewhere. A lot of it came from administrative cuts. A lot of it came from not replacing some staff that retired. A lot of folks argued, I don't think that was the right move. You shouldn't consolidate librarians. Okay, we have to consolidate somewhere, and they're not always easy decisions, but I don't know that it's also fair to say you're not in any way fiscally responsible and it's all frills and unicorns and rainbows at every building. It's unfortunately not the case. So hopefully I'm hitting all the, Mrs. Mortensen, you're very disappointed in the security vestibules not being a priority. It's absolutely a priority. Again, I don't expect you, Joyce, to be paying attention to every meeting, but you know, we have been talking about these for years. It is a priority. Security is a priority. Having human beings at the door, top priority. It's just a matter of getting from here to there. And money helps, but also having the bodies that we can hire would help even more. It's not even like, even if we have $100, if the bodies aren't there and Chief Gibbons, you know, he puts out an ad and he gets 0 applicants, there's nothing he can do other than he's shaking the trees. He's trying to talk to people. It's just not, it's such a small pool of applicants that are even eligible. There was also talk, Mike, you had said about going to SROs, school resource officers, which is more expensive, but then it allows the chiefs to use those officers in other capacities, not just in the school. So we are trying, SROs, private security, you know, shared services. We're doing the best we can. It's just, we just don't have a line out the door of folks that want to do that job 3 years after they retire from being a police officer. Security safety feels, I think I covered that. Mr. Workman, you want to know what the COVID money, a lot was spent on mental health and infrastructure at the time. Dr. LaSousa can probably go, or Peter can go into more detail on that. Some of it was HVAC, some of it was roofs. A lot of it was mental health. The 3 clinicians, same thing, it's mental health. I don't remember the date, but if you go back, maybe Dr. Donahue would remember the date, but we gave a presentation on the state of mental health, and it is frightening. It's absolutely frightening how many students are you know, just require extra resources. You know, I know everybody thinks everybody's happy and high-flying, but that's just not the case, and we have a lot of students that require these services, and the alternative is not even negotiable about not providing these students with mental health. The alternative is just simply not, it's unthinkable. Mr. Heap, perspective, safest town in New Jersey, safest town in the world. I bet you Newtown, Connecticut folks said the same thing. You can't prevent random acts, but we can certainly be as prudent as possible in protecting our students, protecting our staff. Thanks for pointing out the leak. That's disappointing. And oh, you said you don't believe in second questions or the way we're asking for it. This is the way we ask the public for straight up money. There's 2 questions, vote them up, vote them down, however you feel that is worth your, you know, if you believe in them, if you support them, vote yes. If you don't, vote no, split your vote, however you choose.
Questions are pretty self-explanatory. You can read the questions and
Yeah,
understand
you can read the
them.
question. Again,
I can understand them. I'm not a mathematician.
Yeah, I'm not the
just a
brightest
guy.
one in the room either, but.
And 2% tax levy does not cover costs for teachers every year.
No.
Simple as that.
No.
It just doesn't.
It,
I mean, you
yeah.
need more money. We can't just manufacture money. It doesn't, you don't manufacture it.
And the lawsuit, and I'm going to send it over to Bradley because I've taken up too much time and this is mostly a finance item. The presentation, Mr. Heap, we had indicated that would probably be something more in the winter time, just because we wanted to open the schools and get the schools ready, so stand by. That would probably be more of a winter thing, unless you plan on going to see Taylor Swift again. Okay, sorry, Mr. Smith.
No, I mean, you did a very good job covering just about everything. In terms of, just to reiterate, the Class 3 officers are fully funded in this budget. We would hire them tomorrow if we had the applicants. We don't. And just to reiterate, the people have to be hired, these people have to be hired by the Chatham Borough and Chatham Township Chief of Police. So Kara, Ali, Zara, you all touched on that. To reiterate what I believe your name was Vicky brought up, the ROD grants are specific in exactly what we can use them for. This year, they have told us they are for HVAC and roofing. And what Ms. Weber just brought up, I mean, I firmly believe that this is as fiscally conservative as we could possibly have been. We had the taxing power to put through an even higher tax increase. We chose not to. There were 2 major costs in this year's budget, and there's only certain levers we can pull. Unfortunately, we're down to pretty much the last lever, which is employees. And no one wants us to go to 25 or 30 kids a class. That would not be good for the district. So when we looked at the budget and we saw these 2 very large projects, one being the need to retain paraprofessional talent, which is required by law to have those people in place, and we can't retain those people. We have a shortage nonstop of paras. and then we have an issue with security. So, excuse me, so we put forward 2 questions to the voters to vote, yes or no. Do you want to pay for this? That's not me choosing to push it through in the budget. That's me leaving the budget fiscally conservative at a 2% levy and putting forward 2 questions to the public. Do you want it, yes or no? And that's for everyone in this town to decide. In terms of, yeah, in terms of also what Ms. Weber also said, we've already cut all excess and all fat. The next lever to pull is going to be, unfortunately, having to deal with employees. There's just not any levers left. It's content, it's curriculum, and it's employees. I mean, that's our biggest costs. So that's all I have. I don't know if Dr. LaSousa, you want to?
Dr. LaSousa?
Thank you. Well, first, I just want to touch on the police issue. And police presence in our schools has been the #1 priority. I first went to the Chatham Township Police requesting a police officer in 2006 when I was high school principal. And at the time, there was no appetite to employ police in the schools. I was kind of on an island, even in the district, and it wasn't something that was popular at the time. Times have changed. More than half of districts in New Jersey today don't have a single school security employee or police presence in school at all. 0. More than half. We have not been in that half of school districts. We've been as proactive and aggressive as we can be about having police in our schools. And the first presentations where we were really on the implementing this was in 2018. So as Brad and Jill have already stated, that's in the budget already. We are paying for police presence and security presence in our schools because we've made that a priority. That has crowded out other priorities, but we are continuing to invest in police, and we will continue to do so, and there's no person in Chatham who wants police more in the schools than yours truly. The mechanics of the police, as Jill and Brad have stated, we have 600 employees roughly here in the district. If you count up all the coaches, the paraprofessionals, the teachers, the counselors, everyone, I can't hire a police officer. I do not have the authority to hire a police officer. Only the chief of police can recommend an officer for employment, and then the municipal governing bodies can extend employment to that individual. We, again, just for procedure and mechanics, we had to submit these proposals in the spring with our budget to the county office. They have to go through everything and say yay or nay, and then we have to submit to the county clerk the language that will appear on the ballot. We cannot make changes at this point to the ballot, nor should we. In the township, we fortunately have 3 schools, all of which are covered with police. Lafayette and the high school have 2 fellows who've been here for a number of years now. They've been very stable. We lost our police officer at the beginning of the year last year at Southern. We replaced him with Officer Dave, who's standing right back there, who converted from Class 3 to Class 2 not too long ago. In the borough, at the time we submitted the budget, we did have 2 officers employed. One of them resigned in the beginning of the summer, and Chief Gibbons, who I spoke with just last week on Thursday or Friday, is doing everything he can to secure 2 replacements for the folks who resigned. He told me just the other day the move to $40 would be helpful. He thought it would attract more candidates. Officer Dave told me the same thing today when I happened to be swinging through Southern Boulevard School. So we're hopeful that we will be able to have each police, Chief Gibbons, get 2 guys or 2 ladies on board so that we have police in the schools in the borough and the township. A borough police officer employed as a Class 3 officer or even an SRO cannot go to the township, and the township cannot go to the borough. So even though we have 3 in the township and 1 in the borough, we cannot take one of the township guys and move him to the borough. That's not permitted. So we have the money. It has been a priority, the #1 priority, and we're hopeful that we will have 2 folks on board sooner rather than later. In terms of private security, that's a whole other discussion. So I've been across the table more than I'd care to admit from people that, employees, who I have to address because they've behaved erratically or because I need to terminate their employment. Sometimes those conversations are cordial and they go as well as one could expect. Other times there are tears. Other times there is anger and violence. Other times we have to call in individuals to ensure that we can escort that individual out of the school. There will not be people in schools with guns except the police. That includes anyone who's retired. The police that we hire here, fortunately, are exceedingly well-trained. They go through psychiatric and psychological evaluations. They have a whole host of processes that they must complete with the borough and the township and the county. So those are the folks who we're comfortable being around our kids, carrying weapons in the schools, keeping bad guys out, so on and so forth. So that leads us to the conclusion that we probably need to be paying them more money to attract them and get them on board. Obviously, if the first proposal passes, upon the construction of the vestibules, we will have more money. And the crowding out effect that you highlighted from the presentation, right now, because we're spending over $1 million on security-related items, we can't devote that money to other things. If we had an additional $850,000 that we were pushing into our safety and security costs, even though $850,000 doesn't cover all of those costs, it would give us more flexibility to pay Officer Dave or the next Officer Dave more money and hopefully get people on board. It also quite obviously frees up money that right now is being channeled into safety and security and enables us to use that for other items, such as full-day kindergarten, for example. So it's really important from my perspective that this question pass if we expect to be able to be in the best position possible to have police in our schools and to be able to invest in the safety and security of our students. Why a vestibule makes sense, and I'm completely on board. You can't harden the schools forever. Someone's going to try to pick a window, a door. Nothing is foolproof. However, it is a best practice to have one entrance in your school at least that is a secure vestibule where you channel that traffic, the person who enters, and sometimes, we buzz someone in, and if Officer Dave is in the back because, 300 kids are outside at an event and someone is being buzzed into the school, you don't always get eyes on them so well, even through our cameras, until they get into the school. So when you have double sets of doors that are glass and you have good visibility, it is a layer of protection that does not exist right now. I'm glad you brought up the point about parents. We do have instances of parents that have restraining orders against them. We do have instances where we have to have photographs shared among staff in a school and our police. If you see this individual, do not let them into the building under any circumstance. We do have instances where parents cannot be alone with their own children, and having a second layer of security at the entrances of the buildings is something that's important. So, to reiterate, we have invested and prioritized police. We will continue to do that. The secure vestibules is a best-in-practice safety feature that is commonplace in any type of building that's been constructed recently. And if we gain approval for the $850,000, it will enable us to put in place that best practice, but then devote an ongoing stream of money into safety and security that has occupied a larger and larger percentage of our budget as every year has gone by. Just a couple of other things here. I'll tick them off, fairly quickly. Yes, we agree it would be better for middle schoolers to go to school later and elementary students to go to school earlier. With this schedule here, the biggest downside in terms of if you flipped the CMS kid getting on the bus at 7:15 with the twins getting on at 8:40 is that then we've got very young kids who are getting on buses at 7 a.m. in the dark. That's not ideal. We know that we want older kids to go to school later. We managed to get there at the high school. We're not quite there at the middle school. It doesn't mean we won't get there, but that's the reason for that right now. COVID money and as well as the ROD grants, they have specific allowable uses. So the allowable uses for the COVID money was primarily, obviously PPP and all of that kind of stuff, outfitting our nurses' offices with air filtration and stuff like that. But HVAC was a priority. That's what we used the bulk of money for. And mental health related issues, as well as learning acceleration. We put learning supports in for students with that money. We hired some clinicians. Yes, clinicians are devoted to mental health of students. And just to be clear, we're talking about students frequently who are school avoidant, who are suffering from anxiety. If they don't have the ability to access their schooling here, they then end up out of district at a cost of $100,000 per year per kid. So by investing in mental health support for kids, we're trying to enable more and more students to be able to access their education here so that they're close to home, they're in the least restrictive environment, and we're not expending huge sums of money. Multiples we're talking about in tuition payments for out-of-district alternative placements. Curriculum is available on the website. You can contact Dr. Donahue, but everything is available on the website. Yes, this is not a backdoor. This is the only way we can ask a second question. The only way we can ask for more money is via second question at this point. So that's, kind of it for me.
Excellent. Okay, great. Yep, I had forgotten to tell Mr. Workman that the fourth grade curriculum and every grade curriculum is on the website, so you can, pages and hundreds and pages of.
It's very detailed.
Oh my gosh, yes. Well, whatever other questions do you have, look at that first and then follow up. And Mr. Heap, you had said you'd seen a lot of toddlers at your picnic, which I wasn't invited to. But we do know that the enrollment is going to increase. If you, again, I don't expect everybody to be at every one of these meetings, but we have talked about, if you look at the demography report, we know 6 to 8 years from now, we are definitely going to see an uptick in enrollment. Again, we paid for the demography report. It's very detailed. They have a tremendous amount of information. So the demographer's report is out on the website, as well as the presentation from Dr. Grip. But thank you for pointing that out. But we do know that 6 to 8 years, and we are preparing for that. And, you prepare for enrollment to go up, and you have to prepare for enrollment to go down, and it's cyclical. And that's why we pay for the demographer's report. But thank you for pointing that out. Bradley, are you good?
Yeah.
Nothing else? Okay. Anything else from any other board member? Oh, sorry. Thanks. Thank you.
I feel like we are prioritizing safety 100%. We need to be, but we really can't overlook the second question, number 2. So the second question, as it relates to the paraprofessionals, these people are essential to the functioning of schools for special education students and the other students in those classes. They help classrooms run and provide the supports that are needed. One thing that I have a concern about in terms of our interpretive statement, I'm not 100% sure that the general I know what a paraprofessional is. I work in a school every day, but I'm not 100% sure that in terms of that role title, that people actually will know what a paraprofessional is. So could we put an asterisk and put a defined, almost like a little dictionary at the bottom or a drop down to say, whether that this is a teacher / student assistant for special education students, or something that would be more clarifying statement to define what specifically that role is for somebody who may not have children in the school, may not be familiar with the role of that individual or individuals.
We can do that with the flyer.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? Nope. Okay, great. There's another opportunity for public comments at the end. We're just going to move to the agenda. And again, if it appears that we go through them quickly, they're posted on Friday, so if anybody's interested going forward, they can look at the agenda ahead of time, but prior to the meeting. So we're going to start off with Ann from Personnel. Yes, go ahead, Ann.
I want to move agenda items A1 to A22 on the regular agenda, and then A2, 7, and 23 on the addendum.
Excellent, thank you. We need a second?
I second.
Oh, there you go. Very good.
Go ahead.
Just want to mention
She
really
left.
quickly.
She left because she had her kids.
We have, Ms. Caitlin DeSantis on the agenda to replace Ms. Lisa Latarullo as one of our supervisors of student support services, speaking of mental health. And she's a veteran at Washington Avenue School. She was here earlier with her young children, but I think the night got a little long, so she left, but just wanted to welcome her aboard.
To the new position. She's
To the
been
new
here, but-
position.
Excellent. She just left. It's getting late for her little kids. Excellent, thank you. Any questions, any additional questions on personnel items? Oh, Peter, would you mind?
Sure, sure. Agenda items A1 to 22 and addendum 2, 7, and 23. Ms. Chicarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Del Sandro?
Yes.
Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Zhang?
Yes.
And Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Agenda items passed 9-0.
Great, thank you, Peter. Mr. Smith, over to you for finance and facilities.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to move agenda items B1 to B18 on the main agenda and B19 on the addendum to a vote. I also wanted to highlight a couple donations we have here. There's a donation of an Eagle Scout project by TJ Kobalars to construct hiking stairs at Southern Boulevard. There is a donation from the Nicholas von Hagel of theater lighting cables and connectors. There is a Chatham Music Boosters donation of a number of different items, and there is also a Chatham Education Foundation donation of items for the blocks that I think Ms. Ross mentioned, and a New Jersey Symphony residency. So we thank them all for those donations.
Great, thank you, Bradley and Ann. Any questions, additional questions for the Finance Committee on anything on the agenda, or I guess we talked at length about the other items. Peter?
Sure. Agenda items B1 through 18 and addendum item number 19. Ms. Chicarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Del Sandro?
Yes.
Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Zhang?
Yes.
And Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Agenda items passed 9-0.
Excellent, very good. Thank you. Over to you, Ms. Ross.
I'd like to move agenda items C1 to C5. Brad seconded it.
It was Mr. Smith.
Yeah.
Excellent. Does anybody have any questions on the curriculum items that are on the agenda? Nope. You can't have questions after Susan's lengthy report. Thank you for that, Susan. Peter, would you mind?
Sure. Agenda items C1 to C5. Ms. Chicarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Del Sandro? Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Dr. Zhang?
Yes.
And Ms. Weber?
Yes, here.
Agenda items passed 9-0.
Great, thank you. Mr. Ryan, over to you for policy.
Action item D1 on the agenda for a vote.
And did you get a second? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Excellent.
Ms. Ross?
Thank you, Susan. Oh, there it is. Excellent. Any questions on that policy? Vandalism, violence? Nope. Excellent. Peter?
Agenda item D1, Ms. Chicarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Del Sandro?
Yes.
Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Zhang?
Yes.
And Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Agenda item passes 9-0.
Excellent. Great. Thank you, Peter. So we're into the board business portion of the agenda, and then we'll get to public commentary again. Excuse me, I just want to report out on the board business. The board and the administration has been working with the teachers union, the Chatham Education Association, the CEA. The teachers' contract had expired on June 30th, and we've been working with the teachers union, making great progress. It's been, you know, a great experience as much as negotiations can go. We're close, and we're hoping to have a contract to vote on at the next Board of Education meeting, which is probably mid-October-ish. I forget the date, 16th? So hopefully by the 16th of October, we will have a contract to vote on. But again, we've been big-ticket items, and then a lot of it's just fine print, and that's where we're at right now. So that was all I had for board business. Does anybody else have any items they want to bring up? Michelle, thank you for pointing out how important that second question is, the paraprofessionals. They're absolutely critical to making this machine work properly. I mean, again, we're a school, it's a Board of Education meeting, in case you're in the wrong meeting. The job is just do what the students need, give them the best they can, given the budget constraints we have, and paraprofessionals play a critical role in making that all come together.
Some people said, give us some comparisons. Livingston, Milburn, New Providence, they provide benefits for their paraprofessionals, some even at a family level. So we are in competition. And when given a choice, there's a reason we have a difficulty retaining or even obtaining people.
Yeah, obtaining or retaining. As Dr. LaSousa said, we're not fully staffed right now with paras. Excellent. Any additional board business from anybody before we go to second? Do we have an executive session after this?
We do.
We do. Okay, so if the board would stick around for a little bit. So we do have our opportunity for a second public commentary. Again, same format. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, and if you could just sign in, that would be swell. What's that? Oh, yeah.
Everyone can please sign the register for public commentary. Thank you.
We'll do afterwards. Hi, my name is Raquel Zelnicki. I live in the borough. I have kids at Milton and at Lafayette. And like many people here, we love hearing that security is your number 1 priority. But what I hear is a lot of words and not a lot of action. So we have not had a fully staffed security officer roster across both the borough and the township for over a year. So if something's not working, if there's no pool of people, if we are, just waiting around for these officers of, that we are looking for, and they're just not there, then we have to do something different. Right now, like we've brought up several times, there's 1 officer for 3 schools, and they all happen to be in the borough. So I feel like this is a borough problem because the township has their officers, but the borough can't hire. It takes apparently 6 months from another session I was with Dr. LaSousa. It takes 6 months from when they're hired for them to be onboarded and able to be at a school. So with that lead time, I mean, we are just never going to have officers at these schools. So if the system for getting these officers is broken, we need to fix it. We need to figure out another way of getting them. I think that's why a lot of people brought up another type of officer, private security, whatever it is. I know, everyone says, we love to hire someone tomorrow, but if we don't have the pool of people, then, maybe one of the ways that we're trying to fix it is by increasing the salary. I mean, has that not been working? Then let's try something else. Like, we need to not just sit on our hands and wait for, this pool to appear. We need to do something about it, or else we're just going to be just prolonging and keeping our schools without security officers. And as Ms. Weber said, I mean, these security vestibules are great, and her example actually with the vestibule brought up a security officer. She said, thank God a security guard was there. So a security guard was there in addition to having the vestibule, right? So that was like the key thing. It's not just a vestibule was there, but the security officer was there. I think, it's really key that they kind of go hand in hand. So if we have a school and they add, a vestibule at Millen Avenue School, if there's no security officer there, I mean, you're not really prioritizing security if you're just waiting around for officers to appear from somewhere. So, from my perspective, and I think others can see, it just sounds a lot like a lot of words right now and just not a lot of action. So, what I would ask is that we try to find other ways of getting these security officers hired and maybe onboarded more quickly. I'm not opposed to having someone or extra people. Like he said, Dr. Lucia said, you can't share a township and a borough police officer. So if we have extra for when people do quit, because it sounds like we're having a lot of turnover and we can't staff on the borough side, then we have to figure something out. Like, we just can't keep waiting for these people to appear out of nowhere. So, I don't know, the radio thing was brought up, because it has to be a Class 3 security officer because the radio. I mean, you're telling me that other types of class of officers can't have a radio also? I just think that there's ways that we're not exploring for us to be able to put security officers at all our schools in the borough like they have in the township. And, from my understanding, other towns like Milburn, they have retired officers. Have we explored that? Why don't we explore more things in order to get these officers at our schools? We've been waiting a long time, and it sounds like there's nothing on the horizon with this, pool being empty currently. So, I'll leave it at that for that part. And then I have one last thing, which is on the presentation for the two questions. One, on the last slide, it has the cost for the borough and for the township. I think it should be explained why the borough cost is more than the township, because I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to question that, and they're going to want to know why on the borough side.
Nick,
You're at like 4.5.
Nick, can you keep Mr. Del Sandro's mic on, please? Thank you.
We get 3 minutes to speak. You're at like 4.5 now.
Oh, I apologize.
That's what.
All right. Kara Firth again. I'm basically going to actually tap into exactly what she was just saying. For an example, Washington Avenue School actually does have a security vestibule. There are 2 doors that you have to go through in order to get inside. We had a PTO meeting on September 11th. Also, I think we'd have maybe a little bit heightened security. I don't know, whatever. No officer was there. I don't know who it was that opened the door for all of us. I didn't show one form of ID. I sat in the school for 2 hours. No one ever asked for a list of names. So yes, building a security vestibule is wonderful, but when we're supposed to be practicing, as everyone's talking, fiscal restraint, where you have to cut from here, we're doing this, we're doing that, it's not good enough to ask for money for only a structure. That's it. Period. End of story. I don't understand why. I understand you don't want other officers or other security people inside the buildings with guns. Why not without guns? To Raquel's point, if they have a radio, why can't the radio live at the desk where someone checks them in? If we can't get it to be a security officer, why isn't there someone whose actual job is just to be there instead of a secretary? Like, they're doing other jobs at the same point in time. And I know we're strapped, but you already said you have the money budgeted. And to that same point, if it takes 6 months to get someone on board, why are we waiting to raise it $40 an hour? It's been a year since we've had someone. So if we've been allotting money that entire time, why don't we have the money today to advertise it as $40 an hour? I don't understand. That's all. Oh, actually, one other thing. Are you really saying that kindergarten is going to be free, full day, 2025? Free? You could just say yes now. You said it.
It's a longer answer, though. I could say yeah, but...
Of course, okay.
Well,
Thank
you don't like words, then don't come to a meeting, because that's all I got is words and telling you what our actions are. I mean, unless you sign, I can sign.
Ready? Hi, David Workman again. Which is the governing body that this union falls under? United Federation of Teachers? I'm just curious which union. That's a question.
New Jersey Teachers Union.
And that is a sub of somebody else, or that stands on its own? Excuse me?
The NEA.
Okay. Is there, I got to tell you, what I'm hearing a lot of is this mental health thing, okay, which is extremely concerning to me for that, that goes above education. And obviously mental health is important. I'm just trying to understand where all of this sprouted from. Is there some sort of a mandate from the union about a certain number of mental health professionals that need to be retained by each school? It's a yes or no answer. Excuse me?
When the public commentary is over, he'll address the questions, just like we did the first
Oh, yeah,
time.
okay, that sounds good. And as I was saying before, security is extremely important, there's no question about it. But having mental health second above education is scary, actually. Our country as a whole is really losing ground, big time, okay? We're prioritizing things that really aren't helping us in the world and helping our kids. We're creating a whole society of victims, it seems. So I'm just kind of trying to figure out where all this mental health is coming from and who's it serving. Who can I get information from concerning that from this board? I am staying under my 3 minutes, but I am waiting for an answer.
And I'll answer it at the end, Mr.
When you're done.
Workman.
You got it, then I'll sit down and listen to my answers.
Hi. You know, one of the eligible, yes, Vicky Aloya Township. You know, the ROD grants, one of the things they'll approve is for security projects. So I'm a little surprised that you applied for HVAC when the COVID funds were used to help improve our HVAC, and you didn't apply under the ROD grants for security improvements. So I'm getting back to, I just hope you withdraw the tax levy on building school vestibules, because it's more than just that. And I'm hoping the $1.7 million ROD grants frees up some money in the capital reserve account for you to fund the vestibules. Let's go light on taxes and let's find other ways to solve our problems. Thank you so much.
Bill Heap again, Hillside Avenue. First, to clarify a position on second questions, I'm not against second questions. I just think they should be reserved for a specific amount, a specific project, and it would lead to a lot less confusion. I'm not a fan of having them used as a backdoor way to increase the budget. If you want the money, ask for the money in an increased budget. Ms. Weber, I thought I heard you say in 2025 kindergarten full day would be free. I will let you clarify that. I don't know how you can plead poverty and then leave $7,000 worth of tuition on the table. I will say that the overwhelming number of my neighbors can afford to pay that. I know that there are some people who can't. You don't have to remind me of that. This is where the college model kicks in. Those who can afford it pay the price in order to subsidize our less well-off neighbors. Tuition at $7,000 is a bargain. Ms. Weber, my apologies for not inviting you to the block party. You're invited next year.
Vicky Aloya Township. I forgot to say, also in your disclosure, when you put out the tax levy, the 2 tax levies you want to impose on the citizens, you need to also state that this will result in a permanent increase in your taxes on an annual basis, subsequent years. Maybe show the 2 taxes together, what the annual increase into everybody's taxes will be if both tax levies get passed. Don't just show them separately, but you really need to be a little more transparent on what the tax impact is of these 2 measures. Thank you.
Libby Hilsenrath, Chatham Borough. This is just a yes or no question on the tax increases. If the 2 questions were to pass, and the 2% is already a given, we don't have a vote on that. Just so people are clear, and again, please just answer the question yes or no. That would result in a 4.53% increase in our taxes. Yes or no? Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Libby. Thanks, everybody. So we're going to close the second public commentary and try and address the questions. I'll let Mr. Smith answer the last one, since that's his sandbox. The whole words or actions things. You've been talking about this for over a year. We've been talking about this for 10 years. We're not just sitting around waiting around. We are doing absolutely everything that we can. And if you want to help, vote yes on that first question. That first question will allow us to pay Officer Dave $45 an hour, and he will go out and tell all his friends, hey, Go to Chatham, they're paying $45. If we have to raise it to 50, we'll raise it to 50. It's not rocket science. If we offer people more money, same thing with lifeguard shortages, pay them more money, they'll come. So that would be one way. Some of it's by statute. Some of it we can't control. We can't, Dr. LaSousa said he can't just go out and hire, and we're not going to put willy-nilly, just put anybody in. And again, the training is critical. I'm pointing to Officer Dave because he's here, but as Dr. LaSousa mentioned, the training is absolutely critical. Having somebody at the door is not always going to solve the problems, and then you have to fire that person when we can get a Class 3. So, I mean, I can let Dr. Sousa elaborate on that a little bit more. You could also go to the borough meeting, and maybe Chief Gibbons is at every meeting. And if you have questions for him, you can ask him directly. You know, what else is he doing? Because, you know, he works closely with Dr. LaSousa. We cannot hire police officers of any kind. They have to report to, a position has to be created by the municipality, and the police chiefs have to hire them, and they report directly to the police chiefs. Kara, you mentioned, excuse me, something about Washington Avenue. Washington Avenue has a set of double doors, but it's not retrofit, it's just a swinging door it has to be fortified. It has to be, you know, it has to be, yeah, it has to be buzzed in, there has to be electronics, there has to be fire doors, so it's just not a matter of putting a chain on that second door. But, you know, you had mentioned something about security. I'd have to ask Dr. LaSousa about, there was nobody at the door because we're sharing. The secretaries are extremely busy. You know, they should be doing other things. They absolutely, but Karen, I think you brought it up. The goal, I'm jumping to full-day kindergarten. The goal is to have free full-day kindergarten in 2025. That's the goal. I think Michelle's pounded that into me a million times, because I keep saying, you know what, I don't know that we can afford free. The goal is free. Do we think we're going to be able to give up the $7,000 tuition? I would like to think so, Mr. Heap, but do I think we're going to get there? Maybe not. Is the answer somewhere in between? Probably. So the goal is, if it's a public school, of course we want it to be free, but we have to fill the revenue gap. Answering yes to the questions will help, because that will free up. Again, crowding out. That's one of the things that's crowding out, is full-day kindergarten. The bucket's this big, the expenses are this big, something has to give. So the goal is full-day kindergarten, Mr. Heap. For free full-day kindergarten, that's the goal. Are we going to be able to get there by 2025? I hope so. Michelle's probably going to take me out back if we don't, but that is obviously the goal. So if I misspoke that it was absolutely free, I apologize. Again, I'm not the brightest one in the room, just doing the best I can, but the goal is free. It's a public school, as Michelle keeps pounding into me. We shouldn't have to, you know, some that can afford it, some that can't afford it. Mr. Workman, mental health, when did that come about? Gosh, it's been coming, sadly. And when did it become above education? It probably always has. We probably haven't spent enough time on it, but if I forget the presentation, and I implore you to go back and look at it. Again, I don't expect everybody to be at every single meeting, but we do record them, and it would be helpful if you look at it to see how many kids have suicidal ideation, how many kids are school avergent, how many kids, you know, have such anxiety that they can't make it through the first few periods of the day. Is it a sad state? Sure, okay, but we're certainly not going to not provide students what they need. And if they need mental health, and that's what they need right now, that's priority number 2. Dr. Donahue may have some additional on that. Again, I must not be clear, but on the $1.7 million, we, the board, the administration, made several applications, 9 in total. Some of them were security, some of them were HVAC. The state, the Department of Education, decides what they are going to provide grants for. We asked for it, they said no, but we will pay for your air conditioning, but we won't pay for your vestibule this year. 6 years from now, that may change. The next group may say, you know what, we're going to pay for security, we're going to pay for security guards, we're going to pay for cameras. But in this round, they didn't say that. They said it's HVAC and roofs for some reason. Mr. Heap, you asked me to clarify full-day kindergarten. The tax levy, you wanted the 2 numbers added together. Bradley can answer that. And then Ms. Hilsenrath, you had a question on the 4.53. I'm going to let Mr. Smith address the finance items. So Bradley, if you would.
Yeah, you addressed the ROD grant. We applied for 9 different ROD grants. The vestibules was one of them, as Ms. Weber just said. And then what Ms. Hilsenrath asked, yes, that is correct. A 2% tax levy increase plus 1.3 for paraprofessional support plus 1.2 for security vestibules is equal to 4.5 in year one. If we go to 2%.
Right, which we don't always do.
That's right.
Okay, great. Does anybody else have any, did I miss something? Riley?
Riley has something to say.
He can go first.
Can you turn on mics, Mike?
I'll just mention, we do employ non-police security in the schools, and that's been helpful in the borough. We also have been, from what Chief Gibbons has told me, very close to hiring a couple of individuals over the past number of months. So we certainly have discussed and can continue to discuss hiring additional non-police security for schools, so that if this is, the way the world is going to be, and it's going to be impossible for us to draw in any Class 3 police officers, that we have a couple of more individuals, because we have 2 as of today, but we have a couple of more non-police individuals that can hop into schools. That's a more complicated discussion for other reasons. But short of that, we've also employed on occasion substitutes who've been willing to come in. Substitutes are an area where we're experiencing a shortage, and we have fewer people willing to come in and sub as security officers at schools. But that's certainly something that we can continue to think about, especially the longer it goes that the borough can't seem to find an officer. But we have been close a couple of times, and he's worked hard. There's no union mandate about mental health. We're dealing with societally an expansion in the number of folks who need support, and we don't have an option to educate some kids in Chatham or not educate other kids. All kids are entitled to an education if they reside in Chatham, and it becomes more expensive if those kids can't access their education here with us. So we've been trying to meet the needs of students. Their needs have grown and become more complex over time. Maybe that has something to do with social media. Maybe it has to do with other things, but that's the way it is. So we will have to continue to assist our students and support them as best we can, regardless of anything else that's in the budget. And those positions will come at the expense of others, like classroom teachers, because we don't have an option about trying to enable students to access their education.
I just wanted to address Mr. Workman's comments. I was just hoping that we weren't alluding to the fact that mental health should take a back seat and that these resources that the board has come to hire are not important. It might not be your child, but it was my mother's child, it was my father's child, it was me. I was someone who couldn't get the education that I deserved because mental health took that first priority for me. So for me to be able to sit up here and say that when I was in 4th grade, my anxiety got the better of me and I couldn't get the right education, and 4th graders now are able to get that education, I think that takes a step in front of educating the kids who it comes easy to them. I think it's important that everyone's on equal footing.
Thanks, Riley. Just a reminder, folks, we do have an executive session, so if you could stick around. Is the band room still available, Mike, or is it?
Yes, it's
occupied?
available, and no action will be taken.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming out. This was great discussion. Appreciate it. Hopefully, we'll see you again. If you can't make it, please watch the videos online. Thanks very much. Have a great night. Drive safely. Appreciate it. Officer Dave, thank you.